Every morning you wake up chasing something you'll never catch. You think it's ambition, you think it's drive, but Epictetus would tell you it's the exact trap that's making you miserable. The more you chase happiness, the further it runs. And the entire self-help industry, every motivational guru, every happiness course, they're all selling you the same poison, dressed as medicine. What if I told you that the moment you stop chasing happiness is the exact moment it finds you? And what if the proof of this has been sitting in a 2,000-year-old manuscript that most people read but never understand? Welcome to Stoic Valor. This is where we dismantle the lies you've been sold about the good life and rebuild something that actually works. We're not here to make you feel good. We're here to make you strong. If you're tired of chasing your tail in circles, wondering why happiness always feels one step away, stay with me. What you're about to discover will fundamentally change how you see everything. Picture Epictetus in Rome. Around 50 AD, he's not in a palace. He's not in a university. He's in chains, literally. He's a slave, property of Epictetus, one of Nero's administrators. And one day, his master is twisting his leg, slowly, watching him wince. Epictetus looks up and says calmly, "If you keep doing that, you'll break it." The master keeps twisting. The leg snaps, and Epictetus, through the pain, simply says, "See, I told you it would break." No screaming, no begging, just observation. His master is confused, maybe even disturbed. How can a man in chains, with a broken leg, be more free than the man who broke it? Here's what Epictetus understood. That will sound insane at first. Happiness isn't something you achieve. It's not a destination. It's not a feeling you get when everything finally goes right. It's a byproduct of something else entirely. And the moment you make it your goal, the moment you start chasing it, you've already lost it. Think about the last time you desperately wanted to be happy. Maybe you thought a new job would do it. A relationship, achievement, more money, and maybe you got it. And for a brief moment, you felt something. Relief, maybe, satisfaction, but it didn't last, did it? And then you were back to chasing, convinced the next thing would be different. This is what Epictetus called living backward. You're putting your happiness in the hands of things you don't control. And here's the brutal truth. You don't control much. You don't control the economy. You don't control other people. You don't control your body staying healthy. You don't control time. You don't even fully control your own thoughts. They just appear, uninvited. So when you build your happiness on outcomes, on circumstances, on things outside yourself, you're building a house on sand during an earthquake, and you wonder why you're always anxious, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. In the Enchiridion, Epictetus writes something that most people read and completely misunderstand. Don't seek to have events happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and you will go on well. Read that again. He's not saying be passive. He's not saying don't have goals. He's saying stop making your internal state dependent on external conditions. Because the moment you do, you're no longer free. You're a slave. Not to a master, but to circumstances. Not to chains, but to your own desire for things to be different than they are. You know that feeling when you're happy, and then you start worrying about losing that happiness? That anxiety that creeps in when things are good because you know it won't last. That's not a bug. That's the feature of happiness. When you chase happiness, you get anxiety as a companion, always. Because deep down, you know that what you're depending on can be taken away. Your job can disappear. Your relationship can end. Your health can fail. The market can crash. And if your happiness lives there, in those fragile external things, then you're always one event away from collapse. Mark Manson writes about this in The Subtle Art, when he talks about how pursuing positive experiences is itself a negative experience, while accepting negative experiences is itself a positive experience. It sounds like a riddle, but it's pointing at the same truth Epictetus taught to millennia earlier. The pursuit itself is the problem, not the wanting, not the striving, the making your peace conditional on getting what you want. That's the trap. And most people spend their entire lives in it, running faster and faster on a treadmill, wondering why they're exhausted and still haven't arrived. But here's where it gets interesting. Epictetus didn't say avoid happiness. He didn't say become a pessimist or stop caring about anything. He said something far more radical. He said happiness is your natural state when you stop interfering with it. When you stop demanding reality be different. When you stop making your okayness contingent on circumstances. When you focus entirely on the one thing you actually control, your response, your character, your choices, happiness shows up as a side effect. Not because you chased it, because you stopped chasing it. Think about a time when you were completely absorbed in something, creating something, helping someone, lost in a conversation. You weren't thinking about happiness. You weren't checking if you were happy. You were just present, engaged, aligned with what you were doing. And if someone had asked you in that moment, "Are you happy?" you might have been confused by the question, because you weren't relating to life through the filter of "Am I getting what I want?" You were just living. That's what Epictetus is pointing toward. That state, and he's saying you can live there, not by chasing it, but by removing the obstacles you keep putting in the way. Ryan Holiday documents this pattern, and stillness is the key, showing how the most accomplished people throughout history weren't chasing happiness. They were pursuing excellence, service, truth, beauty, and happiness came along for the ride. But the moment they made happiness the goal, it vanished like trying to grab smoke. The same pattern, over and over, across centuries, across cultures. The chase is the problem, always has been. And we keep forgetting this lesson, seduced by the promise that this time, this thing, will finally make us happy. Hold that thought, because what I'm about to share changes everything. The way you've been taught to pursue happiness isn't just ineffective. It's the exact mechanism creating your suffering. And the way out is so counterintuitive that when you first hear it, your mind will resist. But knowing this changes nothing if you don't know how to apply it. And the way you apply it is not what you think. So how do you actually do this? How do you stop chasing happiness when everything in your culture, your upbringing, your own instincts is screaming at you to pursue it? Let me show you exactly what Epictetus taught, not as abstract philosophy, but as a daily practice that rewires how you relate to life. Because there's a difference between understanding this intellectually and living it. And that difference is everything. Imagine you wake up tomorrow morning, and the first thought that hits you is worry. Maybe about work, maybe about money, maybe about a relationship. The normal human response is to immediately start problems. How do I fix this? How do I make this feeling go away? How do I get to a place where I don't have to feel this? That's chasing. You're chasing the feeling of relief, which you've labeled happiness. And Epictetus would tell you that the chase itself is adding suffering on top of the original concern. The original concern might be practical. The chase is making it existential. Here's the practice. When that worry shows up, you pause, just for 3 seconds. And you ask one question. Is this within my control? Not theoretically. Not if you work hard enough. Actually within your control right now. And here's what you'll discover. Almost nothing is. You can't control if you get fired. You can control how you respond if you do. You can't control if your partner leaves. You can control how you show up in the relationship. You can't control the economy crashing. You can control your choices within whatever economy exists. This distinction sounds simple. It's not. It's surgical. And it cuts through 90% of your suffering when you actually apply it. Let me give you a concrete example. You send a message to someone important, a job application, a text to someone you care about, a pitch to a client, and you're waiting for a response. Most people will spend the next hours, maybe days, checking their phone, imagining scenarios, trying to predict the outcome, emotionally rehearsing both success and failure. That's chasing. You're chasing the relief of knowing, the happiness of a positive response. And in the chase, you're suffering, anxious, distracted, unable to be present for anything else. Epictetus would look at you and ask, can you control their response? No. Can you control when they respond? No. Can you control what they think of you? No. So why are you giving your peace to something you don't control? The Stoic response is radically different. You send the message, and then you release it, completely. Not because you don't care about the outcome, but because caring about it before it happens is choosing to suffer for nothing. You've done what's in your control. You sent a good message. Everything after that is not your domain. And when you actually practice this, something strange happens. You're not less effective. You're more effective. Because your energy isn't bleeding out into anxiety. It's available for the next thing you actually can control. Your work, your relationships, your presence, your character. But there's a problem most people hit immediately when they try this. It feels like giving up. It feels like you're supposed to care, and not caring means you're cold or detached. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of what Epictetus taught. He didn't say don't care. He said don't make your inner state contingent on outcomes you don't control. Huge difference. You can care deeply about doing your best. You can care about people. You can care about your work. But your peace, your okayness, your ability to function, that can't be outsourced to results. The moment it is, you're enslaved. James Clear talks about this in Atomic Habits, when he discusses the difference between outcome-based goals and system-based goals. Outcome goals, I want to lose 20 pounds, make 6 figures, find a partner. They put your happiness in the future, contingent on things partly outside your control. System goals, I'm the kind of person who moves my body daily, who provides value, who shows up authentically. They put your identity in the present, based on things entirely within your control. Same concept Epictetus taught, different language. And the people who live this way aren't less successful. They're more successful, and they're happy during the process, not just if they reach the destination. Now, what I'm about to share is counterintuitive, but it's essential. Every evening, Epictetus recommended a practice that feels almost morbid at first. He called it negative visualization. Before you sleep, you imagine losing everything you have. Your health, your loved ones, your possessions, your status, not to make yourself miserable, to make yourself free. Because when you've mentally rehearsed loss, 2 things happen. 1, you appreciate what you have more deeply right now, not taking it for granted. 2, you inoculate yourself against the shock of loss. So if it happens, you don't shatter. Most people avoid this practice because it feels like inviting bad luck or being pessimist. But consider what actually happens when you avoid thinking about loss. You become attached. dependent. Your happiness becomes hostage to things staying exactly as they are. And when change comes, and it always comes, you're devastated. Not just by the loss, but by the fact that you built your entire sense of okayness on something temporary. Epictetus, who lost his freedom, his health, who had nothing, was happier than his master who had everything. Why? Because his happiness wasn't located in things that could be taken. It was located in his capacity to respond with virtue, regardless of circumstances. Here's how you practice this tonight. Before sleep, sit quietly for 5 minutes. And imagine, vividly, one thing you depend on for happiness being gone. Maybe it's your job. Imagine getting the call. You're let go. Feel the initial shock. And then ask, could I be okay? Could I respond with dignity? Could I find my way forward? The answer, if you're honest, is yes. You'd have to. And in realizing that, something loosens. The grip that thing has on you weakens. You start to see that your okayness was never actually dependent on it. You just thought it was. If this is hitting different, if you're feeling something shift inside you right now, then subscribe to Stoic Valor, because we're not building an audience here. We're building a brotherhood of people who refuse to be enslaved by circumstances. We're just getting started. And what we're about to explore will show you that this isn't just ancient philosophy. This is how real people, in the modern world, have stopped suffering and started living. But does this actually work in the real world, when everything is falling apart? Let me show you. But does this actually work when you're facing real loss, real pain, real circumstances that feel impossible? When you're not a philosopher but a regular person whose life is genuinely hard, let me show you what happens when people stop chasing happiness and start living this way. Because theory is beautiful, but reality is where philosophy proves itself or dies. There was a woman I'll call Sarah, mid-30s, spent 15 years building a career in corporate law. Prestigious firm, 6-figure salary, the whole package. And she was miserable. Not because the job was bad, because she'd built her entire identity on achievement, on the next promotion, the next victory, convinced that if she just climbed high enough, happiness would be there waiting. It never was. Every achievement brought a brief hit of satisfaction, then nothing, and back to chasing. She came across Epictetus during a particularly dark period, reading the discourses on a recommendation she almost ignored. One line stopped her cold. Happiness and freedom begin with a clear understanding of one principle. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. She'd read similar things before, but this time, something clicked. She realized she'd been chasing happiness in outcomes, in other people's approval, in metrics she couldn't control. And she asked herself the question Epictetus forces you to confront. What do I actually control? The answer was uncomfortable. Her effort, her integrity, her choices, not the partnership she wanted, not her parents' approval, not the market, not her age, just her response. She made a decision that looked insane to everyone around her. She left the firm, not to chase happiness somewhere else, but to stop making her okayness dependent on external validation. She started a small practice, working with clients she actually cared about, making a fraction of the money. And here's what happened. For the first time in 15 years, she wasn't miserable. Not because her circumstances were perfect. They weren't. Money was tight. Status was gone. But her happiness wasn't located in those things anymore. It was located in alignment with her values, in doing work that mattered to her, in no longer prostituting her peace for achievements that meant nothing to her. That's the Stoic shift. Not chasing happiness, living according to nature, according to virtue, and letting happiness be the byproduct. Contrast that with another case. A man who took the opposite path. Successful entrepreneur, company valued at millions, and then it collapsed. Market crash, bad decisions, partners who betrayed him, everything gone. And his response was to immediately start chasing again. New startup, new scheme. Convinced that if he could just get back to where he was, he'd be happy again. 5 years later, nothing had changed. Not externally, he'd actually rebuilt some success. But internally, he was still chasing, still suffering, still putting his happiness just out of reach. Contingent on the next thing. Same trap, different circumstances. Ryan Holiday documents this pattern in The Obstacle is the Way, showing how people who stop chasing outcomes and start focusing on process, on character, on response, they don't just survive adversity, they transform it. But the ones who keep chasing, who keep making their internal state dependent on external conditions, they suffer regardless of whether they succeed or fail, because the chase itself is the suffering, not the circumstances, the relationship to the circumstances. Let me give you another case, more extreme. A father whose teenage son died in a car accident. Objectively, devastatingly painful. Nothing about Stoicism makes that not hurt. But here's what he told me months later. In the immediate aftermath, he wanted to die. The pain was unbearable, but he remembered something he'd read from Epictetus. Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. It sounds almost cruel in the face of that kind of loss, but he understood it differently than most people do. He wasn't being told to be happy his son died. He was being told that reality is what it is, and his only choice was how to respond to it. He could spend the rest of his life in bitterness, demanding reality be different, chasing the impossible happiness of his son being alive. Or he could honor his son by living well, by being present for his other children, by not letting grief destroy what remained of his life. He chose the latter, not because it was easy, because it was the only path that led somewhere other than endless suffering. And he said something profound. "I'm not happy my son died. I'll never be happy about that. But I'm no longer making my ability to function contingent on him being alive." And in that shift, I found I could live again. That's what Epictetus meant. That's the depth of this philosophy. It's not toxic positivity. It's not pretending pain doesn't hurt. It's refusing to add suffering on top of pain by demanding reality be other than it is. It's the difference between pain, which is inevitable, and suffering, which is optional. Pain happens to you. Suffering is what you do to yourself by resisting reality. Now let's talk about someone younger, because this applies at every stage. A college student, talented athlete, injury ends his sports career. His entire identity, his path to a scholarship, his friend group, his daily routine, all built around being an athlete. And suddenly that's gone. Most people in his position spiral. Depression, substance abuse, feeling like life is over at 20. He went a different direction. He found Marcus Aurelius, who wrote extensively about accepting what happens and using it. He stopped chasing the happiness he thought he'd have as a professional athlete. He stopped making his okayness dependent on his body working the way he wanted. And he asked, what can I control now? He could control his attitude, his effort in rehab, his choice to help other athletes avoid his mistakes. He became a trainer, a coach, pouring everything he learned into helping others. And he told me, I'm happier now than I was when I could play. Because when I played, I was terrified of losing it. Now, I've lost it, and I'm free. My happiness doesn't depend on my knee working. It depends on me showing up with integrity to whatever life is now. Same situation, different responses, completely different outcomes. The ones who stop chasing happiness and start living according to their values, according to virtue, according to what's actually in their control, they find a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. The ones who keep chasing, who keep demanding life, give them what they want before they allow themselves to be okay. They suffer regardless of what happens, because the chase never ends. There's always something else to achieve, to acquire, to fix, before they give themselves permission to be happy. These aren't special people. They're people who understood what Epictetus taught, and they made one decision: to stop chasing. So the question becomes, are you ready to make that same decision? Because everything changes after this. Remember what we started with? The idea that the more you chase happiness, the further it runs. Now you understand why. Chasing puts happiness outside yourself, in circumstances, in outcomes, in things you don't control. And the entire game is rigged against you, not because life is unfair, though it often is, but because you're playing the wrong game entirely. Epictetus discovered what every wisdom tradition eventually arrives at through different paths. The happiness you're looking for isn't out there. It's not in the future. It's not conditional on anything changing. It's available right now. The moment you stop demanding reality be different and start responding to reality with virtue. Let me bring this full circle. What Epictetus taught isn't a strategy for getting happy. It's a complete dismantling of the entire framework that makes you unhappy. You think your problem is that you haven't achieved enough, haven't found the right person, haven't fixed your circumstances. But that's not your problem. Your problem is that you've made your internal state hostage to external conditions. And as long as you do that, you'll suffer. Not because you're weak. Because it's impossible not to suffer when your peace depends on things you can't control. But here's the part that will either liberate you or make you close this video. You already know this is true. Deep down, you've always known. Every time you achieved something you thought would make you happy, and it didn't last. Every time circumstances were perfect, and you still felt anxious. Every time you got what you wanted, and the satisfaction faded within days. You've been gathering evidence your entire life that chasing doesn't work. And yet you keep chasing. Why? Because you don't know what else to do. Because everyone around you is chasing. Because the alternative sounds like giving up, but it's not giving up. It's the opposite. It's finally picking up the one thing you actually have power over. Your response, your character, your choices. Right now, in this moment, not when circumstances improve. Not when you achieve your goals. Now, Epictetus, in chains, with a broken leg, with no freedom, no possessions, no control over his external life, was freer than emperors. How? Because his freedom wasn't located in circumstances. It was located in his capacity to respond with virtue, regardless of what happened to him. That's a freedom no one can take. That's a happiness that doesn't depend on anything going right. So here's what you need to ask yourself right now. Are you tired of chasing? Are you tired of making your okayness conditional on the next achievement, the next relationship, the next circumstance finally being right? Are you tired of being enslaved to outcomes you don't control? Because if you are, if something inside you is finally ready to stop running, then here's what happens next. You make one decision, not to be happy, to stop chasing happiness. and instead, to focus entirely on what you actually control. Your integrity, your effort, your presence, your response to whatever life brings. Let me paint two futures for you. Future 1. You watch this video, feel something, maybe even agree with it intellectually, and then you go back to chasing the promotion, the relationship, the body, the financial milestone, convinced that this time will be different. And 6 months from now, you're in the exact same place emotionally. Maybe your circumstances changed. Maybe they didn't. Doesn't matter. You're still chasing, still suffering, still putting happiness just out of reach, conditional on the next thing. And you'll watch another video, read another book, attend another seminar, looking for the secret. Not realizing the secret isn't more information. It's stopping the chase. Future 2. You watch this video, and you do something radically different. Tonight, before you sleep, you practice negative visualization. You imagine losing one thing you're depending on for happiness. And you ask yourself, could I be okay? Could I respond with dignity? And tomorrow morning, when worry shows up, you ask, is this in my control? And if it's not, you practice releasing it. Not because you don't care. Because your peace can't be outsourced to circumstances. And you do this again the next day. And the next, not perfectly. Epictetus never demanded perfection. He demanded practice. And slowly, something shifts. Not in your circumstances. Maybe your circumstances get worse. But something in you becomes You notice you're not chasing anymore. You're living, you're present. You're responding to what is, instead of demanding what should be. And happiness, the thing you spent your life chasing, shows up uninvited. Not because you did everything right. Because you stopped doing everything wrong. You stopped making it conditional. You stopped putting it in the future. You stopped locating it in circumstances. And in that space, it emerged. Not as a feeling you have to maintain. As your natural state when you stop interfering with it. Here's the challenge I'm giving you. Tonight, before you sleep, write down one thing you're chasing. One thing you've made your happiness dependent on. Getting that job, fixing that relationship, achieving that goal. And then ask yourself Epictetus's question. Is this within my control? Be honest. The outcome isn't. Your effort toward it is. Your integrity in the process is. Your character regardless of results is. Those are in your control. And your happiness needs to be built there. Not on the outcome. On who you are in pursuit of the outcome. That's the shift. That's what Epictetus taught. And it changes everything. If you want to continue this journey, if you're ready to stop chasing and start living, subscribe to Stoic Valor. We're not here for people who want quick fixes and easy answers. We're here for the few who understand that real freedom, real happiness, requires completely rewiring how you relate to life. Every video we create is designed to give you tools for that rewiring, not motivation that fades, transformation that lasts. Drop a comment telling me, what's the one thing you've been chasing that you're ready to release? What's the one external condition you've made your happiness dependent on? Your answer might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally stop their own chase. And if you know someone who's exhausted from running, someone who's achieved everything and still feels empty, send them this video, not to fix them, to remind them they have everything they need already. They just forgot. Epictetus wrote something that most people read and forget. But if you really hear it, it ends the chase forever. There is only one way to happiness, and that is to cease worrying about things which are beyond the power of our will. Read that slowly. The entire path to happiness is in that one sentence. Stop worrying about what you can't control. Stop making your peace dependent on outcomes. Stop chasing and start living according to what's actually in your power. Your virtue, your response, your character, that's the kingdom you rule. That's where happiness lives. Not somewhere you have to go. Somewhere you've always been. You just covered it up with chasing. You're standing at a fork right now. One path leads back to the chase. The same pattern that hasn't worked, that will never work, that keeps you enslaved to circumstances. The other path leads to freedom. Not easy freedom. Earned freedom. The freedom of knowing your happiness doesn't depend on anything outside yourself. Epictetus can't walk that path for you. Only you can make that choice. And you make it not once, but every single day. Every time you choose your response over your reaction. Every time you focus on what you control instead of what you don't. Every time you stop chasing and start being. This is where it starts. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Now, this moment. The chase ends when you decide it ends. And the life you've been looking for begins the moment you stop looking and start living it. That's what Epictetus discovered in chains that his master never found in freedom. That's what's available to you right now. See you in the next one.